I'm Rufus Griscom, and this is The Next Big Idea. Today, the rise and fall of WeWork.
Welcome, and thank you for coming.
It's a Sunday afternoon in September 2019, and Adam Neumann is in a pickle. He's standing in an empty lobby at the headquarters of the company he runs, WeWork. Adam co-founded WeWork back in 2010. At the time, it was a side hustle, a plan B in case his main gig, making baby clothes with built-in knee pads, didn't work out. But in the 9 years since, WeWork has gone from side hustle to juggernaut. It brought co-working into the mainstream and reaped the rewards. 500,000 members, locations in more than 120 countries, and a valuation of $47 billion. Now, Adam is trying to take the company public. Last month, WeWork filed a prospectus with the SEC. For the first time, the most valuable startup in the country showed the world its balance sheet, and the world was not impressed. The prospectus is, as one analyst put it, a masterpiece of obfuscation. It claims that the company's mission is to, quote, elevate the world's consciousness and unlock the energy of we. But once you hack away at the layers of jargon, you're left with a company that is hemorrhaging cash faster than a victim in a slasher film. In the 6 months leading up to the IPO, WeWork lost nearly $1.5 billion. And then there's the hypocrisy. For a company that's supposed to be all about we, the prospectus is really all about Adam. He's been given 20-1 voting control. He trademarked the word we and is charging the company $6 million to use it. He put his wife in charge of naming his successor. The negative publicity is mounting, and WeWork's $47 billion valuation is in free fall.
WeWork has been, basically a major debacle. They thought they were going to bring it public for $40 billion. They can't even get $10 billion now.
Will you stop the WeWork deal? Please, let's stop WeWork.
But Adam has no interest in stopping. He can't. WeWork's losses are so great, it needs an injection of capital now. The way he sees it, the IPO is his only option, which is why he's standing here on a Sunday afternoon, dressed in a tailored navy suit and a crisp white shirt, his long wavy hair tucked neatly behind his ears.
Mikey, is there any reason you want the teleprompter behind the camera so I'm looking straight at you, or you don't care? Because my eyes are a little shooting to the right. That's okay.
Adam is recording a video for WeWork's roadshow. It's a critical part of the IPO process where company leaders make their pitch to potential investors. The other execs at WeWork filmed their segments weeks ago, but not Adam. He missed 4 film shoots, which cost the company hundreds of thousands of dollars and ran down the clock. Now he's almost out of time. The roadshow video has to go out tomorrow morning. Luckily, this sort of thing is a cakewalk for Adam. Tell the story of WeWork, share the mission, talk up the financials. He's probably given versions of this presentation more times than he can count. And being the master salesman that he is, it usually ends with someone cutting him a big fat check. Today, though, something is off.
Real estate is going through a fundamental shift from a fixed cost per seat commodity to an experiential, differentiated, it's a mouthful, from a fixed cost per seat commodity to a must-have experiential. I can do it.
He tries to shake it off. He cracks jokes, leans on one leg, lifts the other, and...
Sorry. The universe had to release it.
But the universe can't seem to help him release his lines.
From a fixed cost per seat... We'll clean it up. I think we're great, and I think we're preparing for the roadshow right now. Let's hope my hair is good. This is harder than 20-foot waves. You know why? Because I control the 20-foot waves.
He has no control now. The man who once needed just 12 minutes to talk an investor into giving him $4 billion is now taking hours to read a few cue cards. Many of the bankers and executives who gathered to watch what was supposed to be Adam's crowning performance have gotten bored and gone home. Around 11 o'clock, when the film crew finally has what it needs, Adam turns to the few remaining onlookers and assures them that he's ready for the roadshow. You have to wonder, though, if the person he's really trying to assure is himself. The next morning, executives from JP Morgan, the firm putting together WeWork's IPO, tell Adam that a rambling, manic, borderline incoherent video cannot possibly douse the dumpster fire that is WeWork's IPO.
WeWork is to file a request to withdraw its IPO prospectus.
It is official. WeWork is pulling the plug on its IPO.
The shared office-based provider is looking for more time to calm investor doubts about its dropping valuation, governance problems, and financials.
Adam tries desperately to right the ship. He apologizes to investors, tells his staff that he's been humbled. With enough contrition, it looks like maybe, just maybe, he can cling to control of the company, embarrassed, diminished, but still in charge. Then comes a story in the Wall Street Journal. Adam Neumann, it begins, was flying high, literally. It goes on to describe Adam's penchant for smoking pot on WeWork's private jet, details the company's hard-partying corporate culture, and most damningly exposes Adam's flagrant acts of self-dealing. Almost as soon as it's published, it detonates any hope Adam may have had of staying in charge.
WeWork's Adam Neumann is stepping down as CEO.
A huge change for the company that just a few weeks ago looked like it could set the stage for one of the hottest IPOs of the year.
That Wall Street Journal story, the one that ended Adam's reign, was written by a reporter named Elliot Brown, with help from another reporter named Maureen Farrell. The two spent years charting WeWork's rise and fall in real time. Now they've expanded their meticulous reporting into a hilarious, infuriating, unputdownable book called The Cult of WeWork, Adam Neumann, and the Great Startup Delusion. Our mission at the Next Big Idea Club has been, from day one, to connect readers and writers in powerful new ways. One of the ways we like to do this is to host online book launch events. We get authors of the hottest new books to talk with other authors in our community. And you know what? More often than not, the conversations are scintillating. Today, we're bringing you one of those conversations, in this case between Elliot, Maureen, and New York Times tech reporter Mike Isaac.
Hey you, I'm Andrew Seaman. Do you want a new job? Or do you want to move forward in your career? Well, you should listen to my weekly show called Get Hired with Andrew Seaman. We talk about it all, and it's waiting for you, yes you, wherever you get your podcasts.
So, folks, I'm Rufus Griscom. I'm the co-founder and CEO of the Next Big Idea Club, and I'm pleased to welcome you to our virtual book launch party for The Cult of WeWork, and the Great Startup Delusion. In the spirit of a book launch party, I have here an inexpensive glass of rosé. I hope other people do too. Our mission at the Next Big Idea Club is to connect readers and writers in powerful new ways, and this new series of conversations is one of them that we're hosting about brand new books. And we have, this is really an exciting one for me. We have here today the celebrated authors of The Cult of Elliot Brown and Maureen Farrell. Elliot Brown is a reporter at the Wall Street Journal where he covers startups and venture capital. Maureen Farrell is also a Wall Street Journal reporter covering IPOs and capital markets. In conversation with Elliot and Maureen, we have Mike Isaac. Mike is a technology correspondent at the New York Times and the author of Super Pumped, The Battle for Uber, which was named one of the best books of the year by NPR, Fortune, and Bloomberg. As many of you all know, the rise and fall of WeWork has already spawned books, podcasts, a documentary, but my gut tells me that Elliot and Maureen's book, The Cult of will endure as the definitive story of how WeWork unraveled. It's meticulously reported. It provides a vivid portrait of Adam Neumann, WeWork's charismatic and more than a little bit unhinged CEO. It skewers the venture capitalists and Wall Street execs who fall under his spell. It's a hell of a good story. So good that a reviewer in the New York Times described guzzling it the way Adam Neumann might gulp bottled water after smoking so much pot on a private jet that flight attendants would reach for their air masks. Apparently, this is a true story. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. We were just chatting before we started about how I think there's something primal in our vicarious enjoyment of the ascent of public figures, and then when they spiral into megalomania in some occasions, and we enjoy every bit as much their dramatic crashing down to earth. Boy, is this a hell of a story. I look forward to learning more about it. So welcome, Elliot, Maureen, and Mike. Thank you. for being with us this evening.
Thank you so much.
Happy to be here.
Thanks so much for having me and I feel very honored to get to interview Elliot and Maureen here. I kind of want to start at a high level for folks who might not have read the book yet, or folks who are kind of aware of, WeWork on the general nebulousness of this being kind of a startup disaster, but also ubiquitous back in the day at some point. But I think for you guys, I'm just kind of curious, when you were wrapped up in the sort of drama of this, at what point were you like, this is obviously a book, there's much more here than what I can fit into the journal on A1 every day or whatever, while I was cursing you from afar, getting these really amazing scoops day after day?
I'll just say, when I thought of it, the downfall happened so precipitously in September 2019. And it was, at some point it would be like mid-morning my time in New York. And I would have talked to Elliot like multiple times already from San Francisco. And it was like round the clock. And we were sort of breathlessly covering it. We couldn't believe every development. But around the time, basically, that we were hearing and reporting on Adam about to step down and get Adam Neumann, the CEO, getting pushed out of his own company, it seemed unfathomable. And we sort of had a conversation over the weekend and said, oh, maybe this could be a book. Maybe we would want to do it together. We put together a paragraph or two, and the process came together so quickly that paragraph or two kind of became our book proposal, which was kind of surreal. Elliot,
that's awesome.
You could say a little more.
Yes, it was great to not have to write a proposal. Yeah, I think
cursing you again right now.
It had sort of like popped into my head a fair amount earlier in the year, because I had been working on this big profile that would end up running and sort of hastening the exit / causing the timing of the exit. So I figured there would be something big that would happen with WeWork around the IPO, and was planning to think about it and turn my attention to that after whatever happened with the IPO happened. But then, like Maureen said, she just sort of called me, I guess, right before the weekend. And then it was the day of Adam resigning that we actually we had started talking a few days earlier, and then met with our great editor at Crown. Kind of originally heard from them in terms of a formal offer on the day Adam resigned.
That's amazing. I think in book publishing world, the success of the sale is usually measured on the length or lack of length of your pitch. So you guys probably nailed it there. That's amazing. If you sell on an email, then you win, basically. So yeah, let's rewind a little bit. I think there's this period which seems so crazy now and really far away now, but WeWork was like one of the most celebrated unicorns of its time, right? Like I remember just doing all of these, or working with the Times or the Journal or Bloomberg would work on these sort of graphics showing the craziness of the sort of froth and all these graphs with lines going up and to the right, basically celebrating not necessarily the growth, but the valuations of these companies soaring, right? I think at one point, tell me if I'm wrong, but WeWork became the most valuable startup in the country, or in the US at least?
Yeah, after Uber IPO'd.
Can you just tell me like how we got to that point? Like, how did we sort of see that and be like, all right, I believe that. I believe that what essentially felt like a real estate company is worth tens of billions of dollars, to the effect that it was.
Yeah, well, so it was really a kind of gradual thing, like sort of the frog boiling in water. I mean, like from the beginning, basically, when I first started covering them as a real estate reporter, which was in 2014-ish, that was the thing that was always mystifying. It was like, how is this valued so high? And then every year, we'd write stories about like, well, it looks like a real estate company, but their valuation is like a software company. And that's a really important thing, because that's how you raise money and that's how you grow. And it's not just this number on a paper, but if you're valued, at $1 trillion, you can just sell a little chunk of your company for $1 billion and then suddenly grow. And so that's what WeWork was doing year over year. And like every year they would just, without fail, raise more money at a higher valuation. And I kept thinking like, well, somebody's finally going to see that this is not real. And then they like do it again.
So you were crying foul from the beginning, or can you boast that you were? Because not all journalists were. I think a lot of folks really bought into the hype.
Yeah, without being too, arrogant.
You can take it.
No, the Journal was if you look at our record, we got this one. I mean, like in 2014, I think we did a story on how there were like eerie parallels to the dot-com boom and a similar company that went bust. And that had a tech valuation, but was really a real estate company. In 2017, the headline on the front page was that, WeWork's was a real estate company with Silicon Valley pixie dust. But, again, write stories and then the valuation would go up.
And I'll just say when I joined this story, which was later, around 2018, it was sort of funny to come to the table because everyone in the WeWork ecosystem was, especially Adam Neumann, the CEO, was obsessed with Elliot and like, maybe you could talk some sense into him. He's so cynical and he doesn't get it.
Oh my God.
And we learned
I'm actually
much
quite
more
endearing in reality.
Your cynicism is endearing. Right?
So yeah, we learned much more of that while reporting the book, that he was just like kind of would be fixated because Elliot was the one person sort of crying, like questioning this, and much of the rest of the media was hailing him as like the next great entrepreneur.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, a lot of this, it's just really funny. We can talk about Uber and stuff later, but there's so much of it where it feels similar, and then there were maybe a few people crying foul on it, but there was a fervor and just sort of a cheerleading that kind of saw things going up and to the right, and everyone gets sort of swept up in that.
Yeah, I just broadly, like that's, I think, one of the things that sort of motivated us to do the book was that like this WeWork wasn't just WeWork. It was the most extreme example of this kind of craziness going on in Silicon Valley, where everything's about hype and killing it, and everything's a tech company, no matter, even if you're like an ice cream company.
And these genius founders who see the future and can execute it.
So that actually gets to my next sort of thing I'm curious about. Maureen, to your point, the founder I think it seems to be crucial in a lot of this. And I guess I want to, and really this book really feels like a founder-led sort of story, a founder-focused story, a sort of very character-driven. And I want you to tell us a little bit about maybe Adam's earlier days, before he became the dude on the cover of Forbes, and definitely before the dude with the airplane munchie bag or whatever. What was he earlier on? Essentially, like, how did he come into this? Was he a serial entrepreneur? Was this his first big thing?
So he was a serial entrepreneur, but they were kind of ridiculous. His first companies. First of all, he emigrated from Israel. He came in around 2001. He had been in the Israeli Navy. And his sister was a model in New York. And so he came to live with her. He was very excited just to be around celebrities. And we found an old video of him saying how he met Matt Damon in a bar once before he left Israel, and was like, I'm going to go to New York and I'm going to like have experiences like that.
That's cute.
So he came to New York, and his first business was this business called Crawlers, in which he had this epiphany that babies crawl, but their knees must really hurt. So he created onesies with built-in knee pads. And we've heard from people at the time, I mean, he would just go to to retail fairs and kind of captivate parents with these tales of that their baby would be really happy if they bought Crawlers. And he was telling everyone he knew even then that this was going to be like the biggest business they've ever seen.
That's amazing.
Did not lack ambition from the very beginning.
Did he have a kid at that point? Did he have children?
He just
decided to dive into babyland?
He dove into babyland. It was just this idea. He dropped out of Baruch College in New York, where he was studying entrepreneurship, to pursue this grand idea. And eventually, he just kind of wound it down, and he met his co-founder, Miguel McKelvey, who was an architect. And they basically came up with this idea of subdividing real estate. They started it in Brooklyn first, an earlier iteration of it. It was called Green Desk. And then even just from the very beginning, from everything we've heard, his ambitions were so grandiose and large, and it worked right away. It was right around the financial crisis. There was tons of real estate that was landlords needed to get someone to use because the economy was in trouble. So it worked immediately, but their landlords in Brooklyn didn't want to scale in a big way. So they started again. They went and decided to start WeWork. They took some money out of the business. They sold it back to earlier investors, to the landlords. And WeWork was launched in 2010.
Had you kept an eye on them from the beginning, just during your reporting, Elliot, or when did they come under your radar?
I was going back and had an email from Miguel about Green Desk when I was working at the New York Observer that I
love
ignored.
that.
No, I passed it on to an intern.
Oh, brutal.
But no, I didn't really notice them until 2013 or so, when they were kind of expanding faster in Lower Manhattan.
It's funny because like a lot of to your sort of point about your email, a lot of ideas or VCs tend to tweet emails from like 10 years ago on the IPO day of a company being like, man, look at the foresight I have on this or whatever. when I got in a seed round of like, whatever, 20 grand. And really no one has any idea what's going to work or not work in my humble opinion. But I feel like a lot of the times the ideas might be kind of similar or people are kind of floating around this certain sector, but it tends to be the founder that kind of sticks out a lot of the time, and like VCs might sort of look at the founders. So did Adam like have that? Does he have like a sort of gravitational pull or natural charisma that made that pitch sort of easier? Or was the idea something that clicked with folks, or what was it about the whole thing,
Yeah, so the first kind of main, standard venture capital tech funding money that he got was one of the best firms out there, Benchmark. That they were early into eBay, famously. They were early into Uber. They were early into Snap. And Adam just kind of had, through connections in the Israeli-American community, been told to talk to this guy at Benchmark who was in Israel, and it, like, kind of connects over the phone over this like 2-hour call that was just supposed to be a few minutes. That guy named Michael Eisenberg, he kind of flies out to New York not that later to meet with Adam, and can like quickly tell that he's sort of checking the boxes for the type of founder that you look for, meaning like he was just this incredibly talented salesman right up front and clearly had like extraordinary ambition. And so, I mean, this is the type of stuff that VCs look at. They're like, well, this is what Jeff Bezos was like, and this is what Steve Jobs was like. So they sort of look for that those phenotypes in a founder. And so Adam had all that, and like, pretty clearly wore off as one of the better salesmen this guy had ever met. And then he sort of brings in the rest of the Benchmark crew, and they come to the same conclusion. I think they also did, to our surprise, like the business. At that time, the business was actually profitable, which is very rare for a tech business.
You're telling me that WeWork was once a good business in its life cycle?
Right. This was surprising to us too. We, at least based on their own numbers, there was 1 year they were profitable. It made like, I think, $1.4 million, and it was 2012. And then they went on to lose more than most any startup in history. A combined $11 billion.
He can't win them all.
So they like that this business, they sort of look at it as a tech business just simply because they're used to looking at tech businesses. And they're like, well, it's making these 35% margins for profit, and like companies, it's already profitable. It's sort of not really seeing that like, well, it turns out it's real estate, and most real estate's profitable. That's why buildings exist. Like you make money on your building.
Right. Was there early sort of positioning around, like, was there something about Adam that maybe, did he connect, tech is, because we talk about, as reporters, we talk a lot about like tech multiples, right? Like where every company wants to look like a tech company just because they want to be valued as a tech company is. And it's never, that's the whole point of saying we're not a real estate company. We're not a cab company. We're a transportation, or we transport everything, or some BS. Or
the Amazon of transportation.
Exactly. Thank you. So, I mean, did he sort of get that early on? Did he home in on like, all right, we're positioning as tech, or did they actually kind of believe it, or was it a mix of that,
It seems like he just figured that out quickly. And it was interesting. We started hearing around the Benchmark time that he was sort of glomming onto that concept. And it was around the time the social network came out. Facebook was about to go public. One of the funny things we heard as we were reporting this book was that he became friendly with Sean Parker of one of the early Facebook backers. he was in New York and he had this big mansion kind of near where Adam and his wife lived at the time. So they became friendly. We heard that Adam would just pop by the house a lot. They called it the Bacchus house. So he would go to these crazy parties at Sean Parker's house and meet all these tech entrepreneurs and just say like, wow, look at their lives. They're amazing. And we've heard that he would tell all of them, like, I have the physical Facebook. Like, this is what I'm building right now.
What does that mean?
And they would laugh. They exactly would laugh at him and just sort of laughed him off. But it sort of moved him from the world of the real estate people he knew who were connecting him, who were giving him money at the beginning, to realizing that like tech was where the money was and where he was going to grow this big company. And there were other points, but that just seemed like a kind of a critical moment.
So did he make his way to... They're New York based at this point, or did they make their way to Silicon Valley, or did they know that they had to make it to Silicon Valley at least to get the money, or what relationship with the Valley, I guess, what did they really have?
I think they had opened an office or were opening an office in San Francisco. And that was like the first place to expand beyond New York, which I imagine like money was related to that. But yeah, his eyes, he had raised money from these kind of New York real estate guys and other kind of random investors. But then I think just realized like, well, venture capital is where this money is. And so the eyes glanced that way. And then he's very his emotional intelligence is just so extraordinary that he just very quickly learns what people want to hear. And so I imagine it did not take him like many conversations with these VCs who often just speak in cliches and are caricatures of themselves to sort of figure out the right words to say and, like innovative, killing it, the scale. And then money just, you say it in a row and money just drops out of a bag.
It's weird. I keep repeating these things to myself on the street and it doesn't happen.
Because if you sort of trace the arc of it, it started as physical Facebook, physical social network, and like the iPhone was about I, but we're about we. But then it became, as Uber and Airbnb were ascendant, it suddenly became part of the sharing economy. And it's like, you guys lease that space. If there's anything you can say nice about Uber and Airbnb, it's like their business model is actually they don't own the real estate, or at least the real estate. They leave that to others. But yeah, he managed to convince some very smart investors that he was part of the sharing economy.
Okay, so he gets benchmarked. That's a top tier venture capital firm. That's sort of like its own pedigree, basically, in getting backed. Convinces the investors that he's the next mini Steve Jobs or whatever you want to call it. At this point, they're growing, right? And to grow, that means expanding rapidly and sort of, I guess I just wonder what the employee ranks look like at this point. And are they also buying into this sort of vision? Like how did he interact with these people? Did he have sort of sway over them, or were they just like, this guy's full of shit, but whatever, I'll take a paycheck,
It seemed like the arc of his interactions and like the makeup of the company sort of changed as the company evolved, which I guess some of it's natural to startups, but a lot at the beginning was very much friends and family, which I think, a lot of startups really are. A bunch of his friends from Israel, family members of his and his wife. It all just kind of came together. People they knew. I mean, it started to get more, he was plucking people from bigger and bigger roles as time went on. And I mean, he was incredibly successful at recruitment too, just like he was at raising money. I mean, he could convince and captivate people and would bring in very senior people that just impressed people every step of the way. I mean, I guess he came in as his COO and president, but he was the CFO of Time Warner, this guy, Artie Minson, who stayed as the CFO till the failed IPO. And he was just seen as a really like senior finance person. He was able to keep on doing that. And then a lot of these people would first be in awe of him, then be very confused as how this company ran or didn't function. But then in terms of Adam's interaction with staff, I mean, he had a summer camp every summer. It was a ton of alcohol everywhere constantly, but he was very much in the mix of things. And it seems like as time went on, I mean, you start to hear stories of like, he wouldn't interact with staff. He had his own elevator, his own way out. So he just started to get more and more distant from employees and really not interact with them, only in special forums.
Oh,
but
God.
People, yeah, I mean, that just seemed like it got more extreme as his as his ambitions and his megalomania, I guess, grew over time.
Hey you, I'm Andrew Seaman. Do you want a new job? Or do you want to move forward in your career? Well, you should listen to my weekly show called Get Hired with Andrew Seaman. We talk about it all, and it's waiting for you, yes you, wherever you get your podcasts.
One thing that I think about just in Uber reporting is like there are people who were just like, look, I'm getting a paycheck. And then there were people with this sort of like slavish devotion to Travis. And particularly because of the hustle culture and the willingness to go down or to really support an idea and a dream and a vision. And I guess I just wonder, did Adam have that same sort of appeal or pull over people as well, you know?
My sense from briefly covering Uber and largely reading your book was Travis was able to get a little more of a caliber person to really believe in him. I think Adam got people to believe in the vision of WeWork. Like, I think he really did convince people that this is not an office-based company. What you're doing is bringing people together and you are making the world a better place. But I think the other thing he did, which is more to why they were so into the company, is like whenever someone would come in and he was hiring them, he would almost without fail, like take out a piece of paper and be like, here's the equity we're going to give you. Here's what it's going to be worth when we're a $5 billion company. Here's what it's going to be worth when we're a $10 billion company, and sort of just get you to train your eyes on those dollar signs in the future. So I think that was definitely part of the, where people's minds went and why they were so defensive about WeWork.
So in that sort of, we talk about the founder a lot. I keep sort of circling back to the founder. But one of the things that eventually comes into play later is a lot of this comes back down to sort of shareholder control, who holds what power, who sort of like has tightened their grip on things, and the willingness of investors to kind of give that power over to founders a lot of the time, And so I'll let you sort of talk about that. But I guess I just wonder, how much power should these founders be given in terms of their companies, in terms of how the shares are sort of structured, in terms of what power the board of directors even has over a CEO at some point, like in some cases you can look at Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg is there. He's there until he wants to leave, right? Or you could look at Google's dual class share structure back in the day, and Snapchat and a few others, Uber. And so I guess I just wonder, A, what WeWork's sort of shareholder structure look like, and then B, maybe what went into that, and did they do it the right way or not,
Well, to start up there, I mean, they did it the right way for Adam Neumann to sort of get whatever he wanted for the company. He did it the right way for himself, not necessarily for the company. But the interesting thing it was against this backdrop of, I mean, Mark Zuckerberg had done it, as you said, Snapchat, Evan Spiegel had gotten like such extreme, what was it, like shareholders got no votes when they went public. He was negotiating into this era, Adam Neumann, where he would push for more votes per shares than everybody else. And when there was any pushback, he was like, come on, you gave it to Travis Kalanick. Why can't you give it to me? Evan Spiegel has it. I mean, we've heard in so many ways that he was very obsessed with Travis Kalanick and obsessed with his. Yeah. He followed Travis's playbook in terms of how he raised money all over the globe, raising more money than almost anybody else. And the founder control that gave him this, control potentially forever had they gone public. The interesting thing, I think, is like he took it to the whole nother level. Travis would go out and tell potential investors, I'm not taking a single dollar out of this company. I totally believe in it. Give me money, but we're all in this together. Adam Neumann followed the whole playbook, except also managed to sell shares each time. So it's like taking Travis's playbook and then, doing the next thing that was good for him personally, basically.
So he took money out each subsequent round, basically, to put it aside. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it was the Series A, the Series B. These are the rounds of venture capital. So it was the first round, second round, third round, fourth round, fifth round, seventh round.
That That makes sense. Some folks might give a sort of sideways glance at a founder doing that sort of behavior, right? Essentially, it might mean, do you really believe in this company? Because you're kind of taking some insurance out for yourself if you put 10 million bucks out of this round by selling shares personally to the stockholders or something like that. So I guess, was that at all, did anyone sort of give a side eye to that when it was happening?
It's connected with founder control. So essentially what was happening in this entire era was the norms about what is responsible corporate behavior were getting eroded. And so were shifted. And so you go back to when Amazon went public and Jeff Bezos is the visionary founder. He didn't have control of his company. He still doesn't. He just owns 40% of the stock or owned. Then you fast forward and people have sort of taken the different lessons from that. And so venture capitalists idolize these founders and talk about how important founders are as these mythical creatures. But then in order to essentially convince them to take their money, they say, well, I'll just give you full control. And so, I mean, it's just like a kind of wild thing, right? Like, I mean, these guys are raising billions of dollars, billions. And like, if I were raising billions, I would probably be, or how about this? If I were giving somebody billions of dollars, I would probably want like control of that company, especially if they aren't contributing anything other than sort of the idea. But because of the way the Silicon Valley was so competitive in terms of just all the money battering down to get in there, they would give founders what they wanted. And so Adam, sort of, as he always did, would get as much as he could and sort of do better at negotiating for himself than anyone else. So he got a lot of control and he got a lot of money. And the short answer to your question is, yes, they were concerned, but they kept giving him money, right? Like, so people would say, oh, Adam, don't do that. It's a bad idea. And at first it started like, well, maybe let's just give him a few million and it'll satisfy him. But Adam doesn't get satisfied by anything, like, right? He always wants more. He always was thinking bigger. And so 9 million wasn't enough. It needed to be 15. And then it was like 120. And then it was like 360.
Wow. Oh my God.
And then he borrowed against his shares another few $100 million. Then the banks, let him pledge his shares, JP Morgan, UBS, Credit Suisse.
Yeah, almost 500 million.
Yeah.
Wow. That's actually my next sort of thing I was thinking about. And Maureen, particularly on your part of this, is like, what did due diligence look like in all of this? Like, isn't that a thing? In banker land, due diligence is, all right, before we invest in this, we're going to go look under the hood. We're going to check the numbers. This is a solid investment. We feel fine as JP Morgan investing billions of dollars or whatever into this company. Like, and then all of a sudden, no longer that's true or whatever, like, what does that even look like as this is happening,
Oh, it was that. It's a great question. And it was incredible what it looked like, which was, one example we have is Fidelity came in. One of the principals there, his name was Gavin Baker. He was one of the main investors there at the time. But he read in the paper that his main rival at T. Rowe Price, another mutual fund, had just invested in WeWork at $5 billion. And he was like, how do I not know this company? We need to understand it and see if we can get into it. It turns out some other colleagues of his had done due diligence on the company, passed on it at $5 billion. They thought it was a real estate company. The numbers didn't make any sense. And about 6 months later, Fidelity does invest at $10 billion.
Oh my God.
And the due diligence, again, people underneath him were saying, these numbers just don't make sense. There was due diligence, and the same thing with SoftBank. We heard a lot of lower level people at SoftBank were questioning the valuation, questioning things about the company. Yet it was, Adam and Masa Yoshison, the CEO of SoftBank, just got together, and Adam just managed to convince people to ignore due diligence, ignore the numbers, and race ahead with an investment at higher and higher valuations.
I'm glad you brought up SoftBank because I feel like SoftBank is a key factor in a lot of how the Valley has sort of worked over the past 5 years, maybe. I don't know, maybe longer than that. But I want to know what the role of SoftBank was maybe in inflating what WeWork was seen as, or inflating that valuation, or even just in the dynamics of the Valley. Do you think that they had like a really big part in it, or was it Masa's particular liking to Adam, or how did that sort of go down?
Sure. So yeah, SoftBank and Masayoshi Son raised what was by far the world's largest private investment fund, and largely from Saudi money. He raised $100 billion, which was like 30 times larger than the largest venture capital fund at the time. And so he goes looking for big fish and just like, where can I just throw around my billions? And one of the first places he goes that is like a company that can clearly absorb money is WeWork. And so I think one way to think about how kind of quick and reckless this all is just summed up in the anecdote of how WeWork got the money. And it was Masa is on the way to Trump Tower to meet the president-elect and stops for a 12-minute tour at WeWork, where Adam, whisks him through the office and shows him the tech section where they're working on new tech that doesn't really do much to their product. And then he gives him $4 billion, or commits to giving him $4 billion, which is the, second largest U.S. startup investment ever.
Wow.
So, and then I guess the other quick anecdote about what sort of happened and how this changed the trajectory of WeWork from going from crazy to far crazier was that Masa, in a meeting with Adam, tells him this story of, there's in a fight, who wins, the crazy guy or the smart guy? And the answer is the crazy guy, because that's how you win. And so you need to be crazier. And so Adam, like by his own telling, was telling people like, I always thought I was pretty crazy, but Masa says I need to be crazier. And so then he would sort of like dial things up. And they had been they bought a wave pool company before SoftBank. But so after SoftBank comes in, he's like, maybe we should buy Sweetgreen. Maybe we should buy Lyft. Like, let's start an elementary school. And so they start an elementary school. And he starts to talk about living forever, and he wants to he thinks WeWork should be involved in peace in the Middle East.
Oh my God!
So SoftBank was really a crucial sort of just like pouring a waterfall of gas onto a pretty crazy fire to begin with.
Is Adam living large? Is he like trying to downplay any of this? Is he trying to be like, look, I'm a responsible, focused founder, and I'm spending our money wisely, or is he not doing that?
Oh, totally. He's put up like for sale 2 of the 8 homes he has. So
8 homes.
It became 8. I think they've actually sold 2. They put at least 3 of them up for sale. But then he bought a $40 million house in Miami recently. So
why does this man own real estate when he can share it?
One of the sort of crucial points of the story here is WeWork was a mirage as this country's most valuable startup, and it's lost over $11 billion in history, and yet Adam walked away a billionaire. And so, now I think he's having negotiated a couple times pretty successfully to get paid hundreds of millions of dollars to go away from WeWork, in addition to his stock that he owns. So he is, investing in startups, trying to invest in lots of startups. He's buying apartment buildings, and kind of has talked to friends about doing something big on the future of living. But we don't really, if there are specifics, we don't have them. And I think it's at this point more sort of aspirational.
Got it. There's some really great stuff in the book about the influence that Rebecca, his wife, has on his vision at some point, and if we call Adam a visionary, then I think Rebecca is a seer of some kind. I'm not sure if I would be one of her followers, but I'm very curious if you could talk a little bit about how Rebecca kind of came into this, how his partner influenced some of the plans that the company had, maybe some of the actions that they did, and just where Rebecca sort of fits into all of this, because she's a great part of the book, I will say.
I'm glad you brought her up, because I did neglect it when you're asking about the early years and early days of Adam Neumann. Rebecca Neumann was so critical to that. They met a little before WeWork was founded. She had a very interesting background. She's Gwyneth Paltrow's cousin. She came from a fairly wealthy family with a lot of, she just had a lot available to her, so to speak. For example, she went to Cornell for undergrad. And one anecdote that shocked us was that she had a family, someone who worked for her family, move out some dorm room furniture and replace it her freshman year with family furniture. Sort of everyone at Cornell remembered that story because no one had quite ever seen a freshman just need their own furniture.
God.
She really desperately wanted to be an actress. She went out to Hollywood after graduation and struggled to get into acting, but she did make all these connections in Hollywood beyond her cousin. She was very into Kabbalah, the mystical.
Like Madonna.
Yes, like Madonna. She became friends with a lot of celebrities like Ashton Kutcher and Demi Moore. She would go to their house every week for Kabbalah dinners where they'd learn more. So she had this network of people that she knew that Adam was, very, when we talked about him coming and wanting to meet celebrities when he came to New York, she had this really like amazing group of people she knew. And sort of from everything we heard, he was always wanted money. He always had grandiose ambitions, but I think she just showed him this whole new world that he hadn't quite seen before. And Ashton Kutcher pops up a lot throughout for some odd, like they were friends from the very beginning. He met him right away. But yeah, it seems like the Kabbalah, even the very kind of like mystical things he would talk about. I mean, he pulled language directly from Kabbalah. And I mean, one of the very famous things about WeWork now, or ridiculous things, was when they wrote their IPO prospectus, the regulatory documents to go public, that one of the things they said was to elevate the world's consciousness.
Oh, that was such a good day when that hit the internet. It was so much fun. I was like in the middle of book stuff, but like someone from Uber texted me, they were like, you have to go read it. The WeWork IPO prospectus. It was the most insane shit I've ever seen. How does that get out the door? How do bankers let someone print that?
I think that's like one of the crazy things about the whole story, where it's just like a story about people's minds bending to not see reality. And so you had all of these actually smart people looking at this document that says it's dedicated to the energy of we, and then goes on to talk about how Adam is leasing properties to the company and borrowed hundreds of millions of dollars. And the company is just this bonfire of cash. And people are like, yeah, this is a pretty good S1. I bet the market's going to go for it.
I mean, it really does. Like, reality distortion field is the thing that keeps coming to mind. They would always say that about jobs, but like, maybe it's just when you get someone in a room and they have that sort of natural charisma that can work. And then once everyone sort of, maybe you step out onto the stage and everyone can kind of look at it at once, and maybe there's some more power in that. Or when folks like you two start poking holes in the mirage and people start seeing it for what it really is, then maybe it's when all comes tumbling down. And that, I think, we're getting towards the end. So I want to get just hit the arc here. Eventually we get to a sort of peak of the fervor. Everything essentially falls apart. Suddenly everyone wakes up and realizes, oh my God, the emperor really has no clothes on, How does Adam get out of the company? Is this a voluntary move? Does he commit seppuku because he wanted to, or what was the final straw?
Well, Elliot and I were just reminiscing about this right before the earlier today, is when we were reporting the coup, we heard there was one coming. The IPO was going to be a disaster. It had gotten postponed. It was sort of unthinkable that Adam would ever leave the company. And Elliot had written this story talking about just really crazy things at the company and Adam's crazy behaviors, including transporting marijuana from New York to Israel. A lot of things that really were among what pushed them to cancel the IPO or postpone it. But anyway, we heard this coup was coming, and I was actually in the middle. We'd been talking a lot. I was reading Super Pumped. It was awesome. And I kept on mentioning things that I had heard. And the coup was coming. We were trying to figure out, it was Benchmark leading it. And Elliot was like, you have to get to the coup chapter in Super Pumped. It's like, finally skipped ahead and read the coup chapter because we needed to know what was going to happen that weekend.
That is awesome. That is the best compliment I've ever received. Thank you. That is amazing.
So it played out differently, but we had somewhat of a playbook, and Benchmark was very much involved in it.
Oh my God. Well, I'll let people read the book to get all the details on your book, to get all the details on that.
Yeah, I was just going to say the basic just is like the Achilles heel of founder control, where this guy runs the whole company and the investors can't do anything, is that you still need money to run it. And like if you have a profitable company, then you're good. But WeWork was losing $2 for every dollar it took in. So that's not a really good long-term solution. So you need to keep getting money. And so WeWork was out of money. And so then suddenly the board had the upper hand because they were like, you can't run this company because we can't find anyone to fund it if you're at the helm. And if you leave, we can save the company and save some value of your stock. And Adam is nothing if not self-interested when it comes to his personal wealth. And so I think he kind of saw that the best way for him to preserve wealth was to step aside. But even when he did that, he managed to negotiate a huge amount of extra money that he got himself.
It is amazing.
Hey folks, Rufus here. If you're a fan of our interviews with physicians, scientists, or entrepreneurs, then I have the perfect podcast recommendation for you, Raising Health. Previously called BioEats World, Raising Health comes from leading venture capital firm Andreessen Horowitz, A16Z. Each episode, Raising Health dives deep into the heart of healthcare, biotech, and AI with A16Z general partners. Along the way, they explore the real challenges and opportunities in health and biotech entrepreneurship. Not to mention, you'll hear raw insights and actionable advice from notable guests like Omada CEO and co-founder Sean Duffy, and AI expert and In-Sitro CEO Daphne Kohler. Don't miss out. Follow Raising Health wherever you get your podcasts.
I want to take a few audience questions right here. I have them sent to me in the chat. So I apologize, I don't have your names here, but I do have some very good questions. From one person, it's easy to laugh at the absurdity of Adam Neumann and to take pleasure in the masters of the universe getting suckered by his sales pitch. And I do laugh and take pleasure in that. But surely WeWork's downfall must have resulted in people losing their jobs, the value of their shares. Can we talk a little bit about the dark side of this? And I agree, like what happened to everyone else? What happened to folks who were invested and, for whatever reason, did see a real light at the end of the tunnel, or maybe a great company here, people that bought into Adam's pitch, how did they make out?
I mean, I do think there is clearly a big dark side. And I mean, the employees in particular, thousands of people were laid off and they were expecting, they'd worked so hard. I mean, it was a wild company that you worked around the clock and there were going to be these riches, this big payoff. And I mean, I honestly, talking to those people, so I think that's sad. The loss of jobs is really sad. But I also think the people who believed in his vision, it was a really inspiring one. And you talk to people, I mean, he did motivate people. And I think there was this moment until people started realizing some of the things he was doing where it was like capitalism can be amazing. We can build these things. This is making the world a better place. They were doing really cool, potentially cool things. And to sort of watch that crumble, this younger workforce, and just watch him extract so much money. I mean, there's just something so deeply sad about that. In terms of investors, I mean, a lot of investors lost money. A lot are still fine. Benchmark still did quite well. Enough people got in at low amounts that, I mean, SoftBank was definitely the biggest loser in all of this financially.
It's funny how you can get in, as long as you get in early enough, you can bet on a real stinker and still come up in the black, basically. I like this question a lot. It's hard not to read your book and wonder about how gendered the startup world is. It feels like doors fly open for attractive, charismatic, broy dudes, even if their ideas are totally flimsy. Do you think a female founder could have flown as high as Adam did?
Never.
Yeah.
No.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think, intentionally or not, the, startup funding world just really looks at these signals for what makes a good founder. I remember I asked an early investor in Robinhood. I was like, well, why do you do that? This is one that it probably was wrong about being that skeptical about, but it's like, what's all the hype about this company? Why is it so great? And he's like, the team, they're just amazing when I found them. I was, well, what was amazing about them? And his answer was, they both went to Stanford. So I think like you just look for these things that are going to be successful, which is why the same reason why we were talking about why these founders get control. It's like, well, they do a lot of things like Steve Jobs, and Steve Jobs was a man. So I think there's a huge amount of that. The huge amount of the people who give the money are men. And then a huge amount of people at these companies, WeWork included, in the leadership roles are men. So yeah, I mean, given a huge amount of this, as far as we can tell, is not based on sort of merit and metrics of business, but just selling. The salesmen are men.
That's deeply depressing. Do you think, just semi-related, do you think could WeWork have actually worked under a different leader? Like this is the other sort of question. And it got to me in the beginning when you were saying that at one point this was a profitable business. Like, was it the fact that they decided to scale wildly, and pouring money? Like this is what kind of Silicon Valley does to or really venture capital does to every idea, which is just, this might be a great idea. Let's fucking supercharge it by dumping a whole basket of money on it, right? Like, is there a version of this where maybe they didn't take VC or took it more responsibly and made it work out in the right way? Like, I don't know.
I mean, I think so. Maybe Elliot and I might have different answers to this. I do think, or even, every step of the way, not taking quite as much, not pushing quite as far. And I mean, you also have to think, and I think we get at this a lot in the book. I just keep on wondering, it's like, what if people just stood up to him along the way? What if the board of directors just really held him responsible for some of the things he was doing, pushed back? What if they voted against they basically abdicated their duties and said, oh, we handed him over control. He is a visionary. He had an idea. He was one of the few people that could scale it. But what if people push back along the way? Could this have actually been a good company and work down the road?
I guess I'd just add that I always was from the beginning and continue to be confused why it took venture capital at all. I mean, the point of venture capital is you spend money to build something that you need to invest in, and then that you need a few years runway, and then you make money and huge profits later on. But this just doesn't fit that profile at all. This is like, it used to be in the world that you had normal businesses that didn't take venture capital. They could use things like debt. And in fact, if you look, I mean, WeWork today, is a real business. They need to fill up their offices because of the pandemic. But there's for decades, there have been others that do the exact same business model, and they can be profitable. It just, when you're growing at 2 times, 100% a year, and you're buying surf pool companies and jets, like that's a good way to not be profitable. So I think, and there's actually, it's a longer answer, but if you look back, there were 20 years apart, 2 other kind of Adam Neumanns before him that did the exact same thing, thought they had revolutionized something by coming up with this brand new idea for office space that was something bigger than it was. And then both went nearly bankrupt or bankrupt, and then reconstituted as real estate companies, and are growing. Regis, the biggest of them, grows at a more modest rate and is profitable because it's a business that can work.
Maybe the lesson is to not grow or not expect tech multiples, and maybe steady, slow growth over time is a good thing. Maybe we should all be just investing in mutual funds at some point instead of VCs. Thank you both. This has been super fun. I love the book. I want everyone to get it. The Cult of WeWork, Adam Neumann, and the Great Startup Delusion. Elliot Brown and Maureen Farrell, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for having us. Thanks, everybody.
Would you like to hear what Elliot and Maureen think are the 5 biggest ideas from the Cult of We? Download the Next Big Idea app and check out their book bite. And why stop there? In our app, you'll also find 12-minute audio summaries of groundbreaking new books, Zoom discussions with your favorite authors, and mind-blowing e-courses. Search for Next Big Idea in your app store. If you like what we're doing, please tell your friends, in-laws, Uber driver, parole officer, and if you have a chance, leave us a review and a 5-star rating if you think we've earned it. Special thanks to Elliot Brown, Maureen Farrell, and Mike Isaac. Those clips of Adam you heard at the top, they're from the brilliant documentary WeWork, or the making and breaking of a $47 billion unicorn. This episode was written and produced by Caleb Bissinger. Our executive producer is Michael Kovnat. Theme music by Costa Galanopoulos. Sound design by Jason Freeman. I'm your host, Rufus Griscom. See you next week.